Welcome to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth, and you're listening to a weekly podcast about books and life. Not necessarily in that order. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show through iTunes or by plugging our RSS feed into your favorite podcatcher. You can find the RSS feed on our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/vm. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at vmspod, at facebook.com/virtualmemoriesshow, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on YouTube, TuneIn, and Spotify by searching for Virtual Memories Show. And if you like this podcast, please go to the iTunes store, look up the Virtual Memories Show, and leave a rating and maybe a review for us. That'll inspire Apple to promote us a little. And of course, you can also promote us by telling people about the podcast on social media or however else you publicize the things you like. Now, you can support the Virtual Memories Show and get access to exclusive content with a recurring monthly donation via Patreon. Just visit patreon.com/vmspod and set up your level of support. You'll get new material from our patron-only blog, and you'll also get to listen to my quarterly bonus podcast, Fear of a Square Planet, which features extra material from our guests and is only available to supporters of the show. So visit patreon.com/vmspod or paypal.me/vmspod and help me continue to produce smart conversation about books, art, comics, and culture every week at the Virtual Memories Show. All right, it was a pretty eventful week by my standards, even if it was early August. Last Tuesday, I got out to the Society of Illustrators in New York City because the Halftones Jazz Quartet was playing. A couple of past guests, Joe Chardello and Barry Blitt, are in the quartet, so I went to listen to them and maybe shoot the breeze a little. I tried to blend in by bringing a sketch pad and some pencils. I'm not lying. But luckily, the place was packed with artists and a couple of drawing models, and no one noticed my dilettante ass. But I got in some good conversations. Joe and I got to shoot the breeze, met a couple of illustrators, talked about some potential guests. So, to me, that's a good evening. Now, on Thursday, I took the day off work, went into New York to record this episode and next week's show, and catch up with a pal in between. Also in between, I bumped into the writer, designer, and window decorator Simon Doonan on the street in the West Village, and pitched him on recording a show next year. He blurbed next week's guest, which I'll tell you about then, but when I told him who I was recording with that afternoon, because I knew he had blurbed the guy, he showed some interest in what we're doing. The chances of him remembering this by next year, pretty slim, but I will try to figure out who his publicist is and do my best to get him on the show. Now, on Friday, a college pal came to visit with her 9-year-old kid, so we hung out, entertained, took him to New York, watched The Princess Bride, generally just tried to be good hosts. While they were out at one point on Saturday afternoon touring around, I edited this week's episode because that's what I do on weekends. So I'm saying busy week, but I came out of it with a couple of episodes and a couple of prospective new guests, so that's positive in my book. Now, this week's guest is the famed animator Bill Plympton. Now, I pitched Bill last spring at a festival and followed up early July when he launched a Kickstarter because he's making a series of cartoons called Trump Bites, which are being run on the New York Times website. Through his studio, he said he's up for it, but he was going to be traveling and we couldn't get together when the Kickstarter was going on. Still, he hit his goal, so no harm. Now, the reason I want to record with Bill is he is a legendary figure in animation. He's had more than 30 years of making features and shorts, all in this hand-drawn style. Not hand-drawn style, they're all hand-drawn. Subsequently scanned nowadays, and you know, they run effects over them, but he's still drawing everything himself. Now, he made his first big break in animation in 1987 with a short cartoon called Your Face, and that sort of got him his animation credentials, his surrealist credentials, and an Oscar nomination. And since then, his Plympton Studios, or Plympton Studios, they're just like this indie force for animation. And this will sound hokey, a symbol, as far as I can see, for like how artists can actually make their way in the world, presuming that A, they have a vision, B, they have a lot of talent, and C, they have a lot of drive. Not every artist can do this or has all those traits. Bill does. And he's got a new feature film out this week called Revengeance. It's with a collaborator named Jim Lujan. He's also got a bunch of Trump Bites shorts in the works, courtesy of that Kickstarter. But Revengeance, let's see, it's playing at the IFC Center in New York City right now. And it'll open this Friday, which is August 10th, 2018, for you time travelers, in Santa Monica at the Lemley Monica Film Center. Now, Bill talks about the movie during the episode, so I'm not going to tell you too much about it here. And he also teases some fun appearances and gifts at the premiere at the Lemley this weekend. So if you're in the LA area, go check out Revengeance at the Lemley Monica Film Center, premiering August 10th. But really, I'm just happy to get some time with Bill. He's someone whose work I have dug for decades. Also, he keeps a toe in comics making, and he's had so much time. He's had so much time to develop his art and his knowledge of the business that he's in, and to keep that indie thing going and not decide he was going to go with a studio. It's all really admirable, and to do it all hand drawn, it just blows my mind. So, as caveats go, we recorded this at the Plympton's studio in Midtown Manhattan, and one of his staffers was scanning images a few stations away from us, and so there's a sound that's sort of like a door opening and closing pretty much throughout. Sorry. Also, Bill didn't have much time, so this is a shorter conversation than usual. I knew that before we started, so I kind of concentrated on questions and less of the meandering superfluity to which you're accustomed. Bill didn't say why he didn't have much time, but my suspicion is he just wanted to get back to drawing. Now, here's a bio for Bill. And there's a longer one on the Plymptoons.com website. This comes from his Vimeo site. Bill Plympton is considered the king of indie animation and is the first person to hand draw an entire animated feature film. Born and raised in Portland, Oregon, he graduated from Portland State University in graphic design. Bill moved to New York City in 1968 and began his career creating cartoons for publications such as the New York Times, National Lampoon, Playboy, and Screw. In 1987, he was nominated for an Oscar for his animated short, Your Face. In 2005, Bill received another Oscar nomination, this time for the short film Guard Dog. Another short film, Push Comes to Shove, won the 1991 Palme d'Or at Cannes. After producing many shorts that appeared on MTV and Spike and Mike's, he turned his talent to feature films. Since 1991, he's made 11 features, 8 of them, The Tune, Mondo Plympton, I Married a Strange Person, Mutant Aliens, Hair High, Idiots and Angels, Cheatin', and The New Revengeance, are animated features. And now, the Virtual Memories conversation with Bill Plympton. Well, I met you at MoCA a few months ago, and I know you do San Diego Comic-Con and events like that also. How important are comics to you, given that animation obviously is the central art form?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm not a big comic freak. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, I liked Bugs Bunny comics, Daffy Duck comics, some of the Disney comics, but and even Mad Magazine I watched a little bit. But that really wasn't my love. My love was always animation. Once I saw Disney and Tex Avery and Bob Clampett, that's what I really fixated on. So even today, I don't read that many comics. I have a few artists that I like, Matadi for one, Ross Chast. I mean, these are some of my favorites. But it's animation. I watch movies all day long, go to a lot of animation festivals. I actually stopped going to San Diego. Mm-hmm. It was too much work and very expensive. The cost of the booth and the airline and bringing my family out there and the hotel and transportation and food was just, I lost money every day. And certainly it was great for PR. I ran into a lot of people there that were, friends and buddies, and I loved that. But it just was too expensive, and I'm too busy doing my own projects to do the San Diego.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I'd wondered was, because you've always, not always, you've stayed in with drawing itself, and mm-hmm. In terms of producing books on top
yes.
of the animation. Is that a sort of PR?
It is.
Primarily?
I mean, I mostly publish my own books.
Yeah.
A number of books have been published by other people. I did a Kanye West book. I did a big Rizzoli, coffee table book of my work, and Focal Press. I did a sort of instructional book, a teaching book about animation. Yeah. But those are rare. Usually I publish my own books for a number of reasons. One is I can keep them in print. And that's always nice. One of the books, Sleazy Cartoons, has been reprinted, I think, 5 or 6 times. And that's nice that a book is always in print. And I have complete control. I can do whatever I want. It's not that much money to publish a book, $1,000 or something. And I don't get distribution like the big books do, like Fantagraphics, for example. But they make money, and I get more of the profit, and I can sell them wherever I go, and so that's why I do that.
The indie businessman thing seems to characterize your entire career. What started that in you?
Well, I guess basically getting turned down. First of all, I wasn't an animator when I started doing animation. Right. I mean, I didn't go to school in animation. I didn't really have a degree in animation or even a reel. So I just decided to make my own film. And that film was a tremendous success. And once that film, it's called Your Face, was such a big success, I felt like, why did I need someone to produce it and take all the money and take all the credit and also muddle in the story? Why can't I have complete control of my own story and the destiny of that film? So it just seemed to make sense to me to own what I made, and it paid off really big, very big. Your Face was such a hit. It's very rare that a first film is as big as that. I got nominated for an Oscar, won prizes all over the world, made a lot of money on MTV and Spike and Mike and all the European TV stations. So it just seemed to make sense to me that if I produced my own films, I would be more successful.
Had it ever, over the years, had you ever felt that sense of, geez, maybe if I was working inside a big corporation, I'd be a little more secure? Or? Well,
certainly the success of Pixar has sort of made me very jealous of what they're doing. I mean, I used to do the festival circuit with John Lasseter and all those guys, and we were buddies, but now he's, super rich and super successful, and I do sort of feel a little bit of jealousy on that. But even he can't make the films he wants. I mean, I'm speaking before he had the troubles.
Right. Yeah.
Even he can't make the films he wants to make. Disney always muddles their fingers in what the final result of the film is. And I love complete control. I don't know if I'm addicted to it.
I was going to ask, does that characterize the rest of your life outside of work also?
No, it's not.
As a micromanaging control freak, I thought I'd check.
I don't. I wish I could make more money on my films, but because they are independent, we don't have a distribution arm or a distribution relationship with a big distributor. And that's been a problem recently because the commercials aren't coming in like they used to. I used to do like 3 or 4 commercials a year for a lot of money. And that's not happening anymore. So now I have to more and more struggle to raise money for my films. I'm not broke, I still have a studio and I'm still making films, but I do wish that my films got better distribution and made more money. I'm hoping now with the big emphasis on internet distribution, such as Netflix and Google and Amazon, that will change, that I can switch over to that market fairly easily. We do. My last film, Cheatin', was on Netflix. It did very well. Sold a lot of DVDs and a lot of views. So I think that's the next step for me.
Mm-hmm. How has the internet sort of helped you and hurt you in that process? Because we're talking right after you finished a Kickstarter for the Trump Bites series of shorts. You've done a few Kickstarters in the past.
Yes.
And in fact, this one kind of came down to the wire.
It did. It was pretty close. Yeah.
Did the other ones hit their goal earlier, or
no,
is that typical for
the same as typical? Yeah,
okay,
everybody waits the last few days to send in their money. I think they watch it online and they see that it's getting close, and I need more money, so they pitch in a little bit more.
I'll be the one who puts them over the top. That's
that's it. Yeah. That's true. But to answer your question about how the internet has changed my career, the DVDs that we make aren't as popular as they used to be. We used to sell a lot of DVDs. We still sell some. We still make money on DVDs, but not as much as we used to. Theatrically, it's not as profitable to go to movie theaters and see animation, although my new film is going to be at IFC starting this weekend, and then to Laemmle in LA. It's called Revengeance. That's the French poster there, but it's the same film. That'll be in LA, and then we're marketing out to a bunch of other smaller theaters. So we still show in movie theaters, but it's not as profitable as it used to be. But conversely, there's a bigger market in Netflix and Google and Amazon and Hulu and those places. So hopefully that'll pick up the loss of revenue from the more traditional distribution.
Hey, can you talk about the Trump Bites project a little?
Sure, I'm happy to.
Tell me where it began and where you're going to take it.
Well, I was approached by two guys from 110th Street Films, and they had tried to get some other artists involved, and for some reason the other artists didn't do it. Maybe it wasn't enough money, or they didn't want to take on a project like that. So I was sort of the third or fourth selection, and I jumped at it. I said, "Oh my gosh, I've been waiting for something like this," because I started out in the 70s as a political cartoonist, doing Ford and Reagan and Carter and people like that. And then when I got into animation, I dropped politics, and the animation became very big, very, very popular. And then now that Trump comes along, I really feel that those old muscles, those old editorial cartoon muscles, starting to wake up. And I said, yeah, I'd love to do it. I didn't even ask how much money it was. I said, yeah, count me in. So they had a list of quotes from Trump that they thought would be good material for the cartoons. And two of the ideas were straight from their scripts. They had scripts with descriptions of the picture. And the third one, which was the Putin one, I pitched in my ideas on that one, and that was one that was really, really successful. I mean, they were all successful, but the Putin one actually created quite a stir. It was a hot topic on Twitter, which is good, I think. I like it, even though I got a lot of hate mail.
I was going to ask.
Yeah, and the hate mail is interesting because I think a third of it was big Trump supporters. Another third claimed I was homophobic because there was some homosexual stuff in the film. And the other third, I think, were Russian bots because they, the syntax was very weird. It didn't make sense. Yeah. I don't know what country they were from. It was very bizarre. So I saved them, and it's because some are very vicious and very dark and kind of foreboding. But I counted that as a success because I was really getting under the skin of certain people. Even Sean Hannity showed that one on his show, so I'm sure Trump has seen it. So that gives me pleasure. But I'm working on 2 more right now, and I think we're going to get the New York Times is showing us, and I think we're going to get more money from them simply because they're so popular. And we'll do some other sales after the New York Times. So I think we'll make a profit on them. But it's a real trip to do them, and they're really fun for me to do. I love drawing Trump, and so it was a real gas to do Trump Bites.
Mm-hmm. Economics notwithstanding, do you prefer features or shorts?
Features.
Okay.
But I still love shorts. I do a feature every 2 or 3 years. Yeah. And I'm working on my new one now. When you walked in the door, that's what I was working on. And then I like to do 1 or 2 shorts a year because I still love shorts. I still think they're a really wonderful format to tell a story, a funny story, to get people laughing. And, I do 5 minutes, 4 minutes, something like that, and they sell very well.
I was going to say, really in the internet era, that's 4 or 5 minutes is preferable to, well, of course, 3 seconds is now preferable to 10.
Yeah, you're right. But they sell equally well on TV around the world, especially Europe. They sell to all the TV channels and a lot of the cable channels and certainly, like you say, the internet. So the shorts are still very profitable.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you talk about Revengeance, and it mentions it's un film de Bill Plympton and Jim Lujan. Can you talk about collaboration in your work?
Yes. The guy named Jim Lujan, who did Revengeance, who wrote the script, he used to come to my booth at San Diego, and that's why I did like going to San Diego, get to meet people like this. And he would say he was a big fan, and he'd drop off his new DVD, and I get a lot of DVDs there, so I can't watch all of them. And finally, I think 2 years later, it was a rainy day in New York, and I was bored. So I put his DVD on, rather. And I was amazed at how synchronous his humor was to mine. Mm-hmm. His drawing style wasn't terrific, but his humor, the dialogue and the gags and the pacing and the characters, even the character designs were really wonderful. So I called him up that night. I said, Jim, I love your stuff. I'm sorry I took so long to see it. And I said, let's do a film together. So obviously he freaked out. He was very happy. And because I really was tired of writing these scripts, I wanted him to do it because I thought he was in many ways more talented than I was in the writing. So about 2 or 3 months later, he sent me the script, and it was a knockout. It was just really what I like to do. I like to do dark ideas, adult humor, kind of noirish characters, really over the top, bad guys. And he had every one of those characters in there. The only thing he didn't have was sexy women. So I asked him to put one sexy woman in there, and that was it. Yep. So it was a really easy project. Also, he did a lot of the voices. He did a lot of the character designs. He did the music. So all I had to do was actually just do the animation, and that was very easy. I did it, I think, in a year, something like that. So it was, in a way, it was a big break for me because I didn't have to worry about, the dialogue and the character designs and things like that. So for this project, the first time I ever did a project with someone else, it was a holiday. Yeah. It was really fun.
Are you looking forward to more of those sorts of collaborations?
Well,
not necessarily with Jim, but
the new film I'm doing, Slide. I'm going to do all the drawing this time, all the character design. I will probably do the music, or I have people do the music. But he will do the script. In fact, I'm going out to LA next week, and we're going to work on the script together. And he will do some of the voices because I love his voices. So those are the two parts of the process that I will include him.
Did you think you could collaborate with someone this strongly in the past? Did you have to reach a certain point in your own development to be comfortable with that?
I asked a few people at certain times if they wanted to collaborate, like Tarantino, who's a buddy of mine, and he obviously said no. So I'm not adverse to collaborating with somebody on it. But with Jim, it was really easy to work with him. He's really has no ego. He's always funny. He just looks at it as a fun project, and that's very important in collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I just wondered if you could have collaborated with someone 20 years ago, but it sounds like you were already.
Another one who we almost worked together with was Ralph Bakshi. Yeah. He wanted to do a project together, and he is not easy to deal with.
I've heard.
He's very opinionated, which so am I, and he really won't change his mind if he really loves something, and that makes it a problem to work with somebody. So even though we're still great friends, and actually I would like to work with him on a project at some point, we never have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, are there projects that either didn't happen or something you really want to get to?
Yeah, I always have projects, a backlog of projects. I have 3 or 4 scripts that I think are really funny. One is a medieval, knights in shining armor one. I think it'll be really fun. Another one is a futuristic sort of sci-fi story that I wanted to do. I bring this up all the time when people ask me this question, and it probably never happened, but I would love to do a compilation of Beatles music with different animators from around the world doing the music. Unless I become really good friends with Paul McCartney, I just don't see how it could happen. But it would be a dream of mine to do.
Yoko's in town periodically.
Yeah, she's around. And she loves animation. She's worked on a couple of animation projects. So that might be an avenue. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much control she has over the music, though. That's a good question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you talked about Jim's style, syncing with yours as well as it did, was that sort of I don't want to say protege, but someone you saw your influence in? Or did it just happen?
He claims that I influenced him. Yeah. And I'm not going to, deny him that if he wants to claim that. But certainly he lives in LA and he has his own influences and his own lifestyle. And, LA is a very different lifestyle. So I'm sure
I drop into LA for 36 hours at a time when I have business in San Diego, and I just run around and do this. Yeah. So I have a very stilted idea of what the city is like. 'Cause all I do is see interesting people and record with them, and then drive down 2.5 hours and take the train to San Diego.
Sure. Well, the Revengeance is totally LA under the underbelly, the seedy, sleazy underbelly of LA, and that's why I liked it. And that I like doing characters that are really down and out and bad and dark and sort of evil, and that to me makes my films interesting.
Mm-hmm. Do you get a lot of people telling you about your influence on them? In animation,
more and more
storytelling in general.
Yeah, more and more people, especially the surreal stuff and the anthropomorphic stuff and the transformative parts of my animation, and they always send me parts of their films, and sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not so good, but I guess I must have influenced some people.
Did it ever weird you out when you started to hear people say you changed my life?
No.
I wasn't sure, because some people get really a lot
of people are doing takeoffs on your face,
sure,
which I find enjoyable. And a lot of people at San Diego come to me and sing me the song, and they know all the songs from the movie. So I enjoy that, because the music is a very important part of my film, and that the people love the films to watch them over and over again. I find that amusing.
Yeah, do you have a musical background?
I do. Not formal, but when I was
neither was your animation, so it's okay.
Yeah. When I was about 15 or 16, I got hooked on folk music, and Dixieland music. I love Dixieland music. And so I got a guitar and started playing. I mean, this was the thing back in my day. This would have been
mid-'60s, right?
Yeah, early to mid-'60s. And then the Beatles came along and rock came along, so I got electric guitar. But I really was listened to a lot more country music. That was my real influence, and a lot of Hank Williams and George Jones and Johnny Cash and people like that. And so I got a slide guitar, and then I got a pedal steel guitar. And pedal steel, do you know what a pedal steel is? it's not so easy to play. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't very good at it, but I just loved it. So I was in a bunch of bands, and in fact, Maureen McKellern, who did the music for Your Face, we were in a I was in a band with her, and we played around New York clubs and bars and stuff. But I realized I had limited potential. Plus, I was really busy with the animation. That takes a lot of time, so I couldn't practice. So I gave it up. But I made a lot of good friends in the music business, and I use some of them now for my shows or for my films. And so I think it's important that I have a musical background and know what I like and know what I want to hear, and I can visualize my animation with certain kinds of music. And also, it's helped a lot with doing my music videos. You know, I did stuff for Weird Al Yankovic and Kanye West and Jackie Green just recently. So I love doing that stuff.
Those tend to be the artist or their agent reaching out to you?
Exactly. Okay. Usually the artist.
Yeah.
The artist.
Did you have a "this isn't really Kanye" moment? Or
I did,
more of a, "this isn't really Weird Al"?
Well, actually, the first call was from his agent, because he wanted to check to make sure this was the right number. And then Kanye called me back, and then we talked about, you know, what to do with the music video. He was great to work with. He was a little demanding on how he looked. He wanted to look very handsome, which I don't mind. I think he's a handsome guy. But other than that, he was very, very easy to work with and very visual. He has a very strong sense of visual storytelling. So I enjoyed that.
Did you have experience of meeting your idols?
Oh, yeah.
Especially with an animation, but with another field?
Yeah, yeah.
And did you have any freak out moments?
Well, that's what's great about, what's great about festivals. Mm-hmm. I was talking about the Beatles. I ran into Richard Lester at a festival in Spain. And I mean, he did that. It's Trad Dad. Do you ever see that movie?
No. Oh, I saw. I haven't seen it, but I saw a write-up about it very recently.
Yeah, it was about. We call it Dixieland. They call it. What do they call it? It's a different kind of music.
It's skiffle was their.
Yeah, it was a skiffle,
thing, but it's kind of
something else. But in any case, I was a big Kenny Ball, the Jasmine fan. You don't have to ask about it, but
we'll
Kenny Ball was in the and it's Trad Dad, and the way he made that film was just phenomenal. It predated MTV stuff, by 20, 30 years. And after he did that film, he did the Beatles films, Hard Day's Night and Help, which were totally MTV, and that's what influenced. And this guy was a big influence on me. I loved his stuff. And then I ran into Heinz Edelman, who did all the designs for Yellow Submarine. And Yellow Submarine had a big influence on me, too. That was just a beautiful looking film. It showed me that you didn't have to do Disney to make a feature film. You can do something totally off the wall, totally independent. And that's another way I was convinced to not join the Disney studio and just do my own films.
Even though that was your
that was my goal. That was my dream when I was a kid, is to be an animator for Disney. I would love that.
Yeah. At what point did you realize you had a style that you'd found?
I think it was much earlier, and when I was doing political cartoons. When I first moved to New York, I did this cross-hatching thing, real sketchy, kind of impressionistic, sketchy look with a pen. And I remember the first time I discovered that back when I was about 10 years old. I was doing drawings of our house, actually, and I had a pen, and I forget how I started out doing it, but I just started really sketchy, and I kind of liked it. So that's been my style ever since, that kind of impressionistic look. And whether it's colored pencil or a regular ballpoint pen or a Sharpie, I still like to do that style. It really is relaxing. Mm-hmm. It's fun to do, and it has a certain look and a certain Plympton kind of style. And I still do it on pencil and paper. I don't do.
I was going to ask you. We're sitting next to a big tablet, but that's a different thing.
It's people, keep telling me, "Oh, you got to go digital. You got to go digital. It's so much easier." But I've been able in the last 30 years to make 8 animated feature films and about 100 animated shorts, and they all make money. And these guys on the digital, especially the independent filmmakers, it's hard for them to make a living. So why should I switch? Plus, you can see behind me all of those boxes of original art, and those sell very well.
That was Roz Chast and I in our second conversation. It was she's using an iPad now, but just for fun to figure it out, and maybe for some illustration work, as opposed to her own gags, which she still does on paper. And that's part of it. A, there's the I'm still more comfortable with paper. B, there's the I can sell these afterwards. You can't sell an iPad original. No copies of Simpsons cartoons or any of the Pixar cartoons. It's all numbers. Yeah. And I like to look at the paper. I like to have exhibitions. I like selling this stuff. And people love to get them, too. I give them away as gifts and things like that. Artist before animator? How do you define yourself?
Animator, certainly.
Okay.
Certainly.
You know, I always figure artist is a little too pretentious.
Or even cartoonist. I would go with cartoonist.
When I talked to R.O. Bleckman, he expressed profound regret about his life that he didn't go into. Oh yeah, no, it's an amazing conversation. You should give it a listen.
Yeah.
That he didn't go to film school when the Army offered it to him because he felt he should have been directing movies, not just animation, and also felt that comics are just storyboards. Do you have that? Given the storyboarding work you do on your own animation, do you have that sense of comics equal something more, or is it essentially for you a way of transmitting what you're trying to get across? Yeah,
it's just one of the tools to make great animation. I like to comment on the Bleckman thing.
Yeah.
Actually, we became good friends recently. Speaking of my idols, meeting my idols, and we've been working on translating his life into a movie. And now I see what you're talking about. He really is very passionate about making a film.
He alluded to that project, but he didn't say who he was working with. So, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, in fact, I have a bunch of his artwork back here. And I'm trying to help him. I really want to see him do it. I don't have access to money. If I did, I would make my own films. And I wish I could finance his film, but I just don't have that deep of pockets. But I told him that I would love to make the film here in the studio. I've done a bunch of stuff for him for free already. And so I really want to support him, want to support his project. And I think it'd be a really cool project. But he's done a few animated films. He did The Soldier's Tale, which I think is wonderful, has some really beautiful animation and great storytelling. So now I see what you're talking about, which is weird because he's,
to an outsider,
he's such a big,
he's so accomplished
cartoonist of the books and everything he's done and the cartoons. And I love that Alka-Seltzer ad. I think everybody who's seen that will never forget the Alka-Seltzer ad.
Although, let me ask that question. His style, and it came up during our conversation. That was the first illustrator who talked to me about seeing his style ripped off by other people.
Oh, yeah, everybody.
Your experience with...
I ripped him off.
And getting ripped off yourself.
I told him
ripped
that.
Off Bleckman? Okay.
Yeah, you can see some of my early artwork when I got away from the scratchy pencil and I started doing really delicate little characters. It lasted for about a year, and then I moved on to ripping off other people.
No, synthesizing and integrating.
Yeah, synthesizing, yeah.
First time you saw somebody ripping off your style?
Oh, I was honored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Matt Groening's line of copyright infringement is the sincerest form of flattery. When all those bootleg Simpsons things started showing up in the 90s.
Boy, that's for sure. Yeah, everybody is copying the Simpsons. No, I have no problem with that.
Yeah, do you think styles have a shelf life?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you have a strong style, go with it. It's real. I mean, like the Heinz Edelman stuff for the Yellow Submarine. I mean, I still look at it today and I just fall in love with it. It's just really beautiful.
So you came to New York in the early 70s?
89. I'm sorry, 69.
Okay. What was the culture shock like for you coming out of Portland, but essentially from what I recall, a sort of rural Oregon
very rural,
lifestyle? And B, how's the city changed for you? But go with the culture shock first. What was it like coming to New York?
Well, I'd heard a lot about New York, and the reason I didn't go to L.A. was because at this point the animation industry was pretty dead. So I knew I couldn't get a job at Disney. In fact, Disney was almost going bankrupt because he had died and his son-in-law took over. And so I went to New York to become an illustrator and do gag cartoons and things like that. So when I remember when that plane was flying over, it was in December. I think it was like 4 days before Christmas. Plane was flying low over Manhattan, and you saw the snow falling down. Man, I fell in love with it. I said, "This is the center of the world. This is so exciting." And even though, as you know, the 70s were kind of dangerous, a lot of craziness and drugs and a lot of violence, I still loved it. In fact, in a way, I kind of love the danger. I love the unpredictability of New York. I love the surrealism and the contrast between the poverty and the wealth. I found it really good source of ideas for me. I found that I in one block I could get 4 ideas for cartoons. So I like the crazy sort of end of the world feeling, the apocalyptic feeling that the city had, and I thrived in it.
Mm-hmm. What neighborhoods were you living in?
The East Village,
okay,
which is where most people live. I got ripped off a number of times, not personally, but my apartment got broken into occasionally, and they took stuff, TVs and things like that. But I never got personally robbed or anything like that. And I don't know why. Maybe because I'm big and people say, "Oh, you stay away from him." I don't know, but I was pretty.
Yeah, you don't exude a particularly threatening air,
no,
although we all put that on when we're in bad circumstances.
Yeah, you're right.
It doesn't fool anybody. But
I fell in love with New York, and a lot of people in LA say, "Oh, you got to move to LA if you want work, if you want to get a job." And I just like it because it's a wonderful sort of hotbed of ideas and stimulation and craziness.
Mm-hmm. How's the city changed for you? It's been about 50 years.
Well, a lot. I live in Chelsea now, which is just a few blocks from here. And when I moved to Chelsea, it was sort of rough neighborhood. There's a lot of prostitution and drug dealers and things like that. Now, of course, it's
welcome to the High Line.
Yeah. It's a tourist attraction. All the big galleries are here, and all the beautiful neighborhoods. It's a big difference. So in a way, I kind of miss the crazy days.
Yeah, I thought I'd read they basically pushed some leather parade out of the area in the last couple of years. Too many moms were complaining that. But yeah, it's New York for you, I suppose. What are you better at, and what are you worse at? In terms of the drawing, the animation, and everything else?
I think I have good humorous ideas. Yeah. I can tell funny jokes, funny stories. I think I'm pretty good at drawing. I love to draw, and I think my drawings are really unique and pretty well done. I hate dialogue. That's why I got Jim Lujan involved. I'm really terrible at dialogue. I mean, I can do dialogue, but not great dialogue. I'm very bad at selling. I finish up after 2 years. I finish these films. I think they're really good films, but I don't know how to get a producer or get a distributor or and I know there's a market for these films. They do very well, but I don't know how to promote. I need a PR person or something like that.
I did Jerry Beck a couple of months ago. I know you know him. I can connect you guys again, so we'll go out and promote.
Yeah, well, he's got his own thing. What else?
But in terms of the art, are there things you look at that I couldn't have done this a few decades ago?
Yeah. I'm getting better at coloring. I think the digital way to make films has helped me a lot, even though I don't draw digitally, but just the whole idea of not using 35 millimeter film and the labs and the voiceover places, and now it's all just, you can do it at home on a laptop, and I love that. It's really, really changed my life. In the past, about 75% of the money that goes in making a film was to technical companies. The labs, the sound studios, the transfer studios, the mixing studios, all this stuff. Now about 5% of the money goes to technical aspects. Whereas that's great because now the money goes to the artists, which I think is where it should be. Mm-hmm. So I'm really happy that that the digital revolution has come upon us, and I don't have to worry about lugging these heavy 35 millimeter prints around all over the world. That was a pain.
Mm-hmm. What's tougher for you to do? I mean, you mentioned, still not being good at promotion, et cetera, but in terms of the art, is there something you look at and, man, 20 years ago I could have done this more effectively?
No,
or is it really...
I'm still trying to learn, but I think 20 years ago, I look at some of my films 20 years ago. I Married a Strange Person has some beautiful art in it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it like that anymore because I used a little bit of rotoscope on that. Actually, I didn't use rotoscope. I used video models to draw from. I'd freeze a frame I like and then copy it on my drawing board. So I think some of my art back then is really good. I look at some of my old art, and even though I'm an elderly guy now, I still want to learn. I still want to, try new things. But I look back at my old stuff and say, geez, I wish I could do that. That was really good. I liked it. Let's do a film like using that style. That's a nice technique.
And do you find you turned 70 about 2 years ago? Slow down at all? Or
no, I do have a child. I'm married and have a child, and that takes up more time than usual. But I still get up at 5:30 in the morning and hit the drawing board and draw until about 8, and then take my son to school. And then I'll go to the studio here and I'll draw pretty much all day. Then I pick up my son and either take care of him at night, or if my wife can do it, then I'll draw. And they're not happy about that. They say, I spend all my time on my drawing board, but they have to understand I got to pay the bills and keep the studio open. So that's the life.
Fatherhood change your perspectives at all?
Yeah, certainly changed my priorities. I used to go out to clubs a lot, to concerts. Even we went out to movies a lot. I don't do that anymore. I pretty much stay at home and watch them on TV or the internet. And certainly my family is my first priority now, and not my career.
Yeah. If you're starting out today, what sort of path would you pursue? I mean, you have enough, I assume, younger staff working here that you see the career path for younger animators.
Yeah. This is something I tell art students. I do a lot of lectures in front of schools and things. And I tell them that if I were in school today, first of all, it's a whole new industry. There's so many great opportunities, much better than when I was there, with the internet and with digital and with games and with advertising, with independent films, different techniques. There's just the options are so much more. But I would try and find a job with a company. Well, first of all, make a film, a 3-4 minute film that really shows off your talents, something, an intro piece to show the client. They take that around, get a job at a studio of some sort, even a game studio or an advertising agency or something that's related to animation. Certainly, if you want to, try for Pixar or Disney or Blue Sky, these are good places to go. And then build up your confidence in your work. Make a lot of friends. You really have to know people in the industry. That's so important. Put some money in the bank. Write down a bunch of ideas. Do a bunch of storyboards of films you want to make. And then after 7 or 8 years, you feel confident. Then, quit your job and start making independent films. And if the films are funny and short and not too expensive, you'll start making a profit. And that's what I would do today if I was in school.
Keep an idea notebook?
I do, yeah, 3 of them, 3 or 4 of them. One here, one at home, one on my
okay, just making sure. I assume that would be the case, but I didn't think you'd have that level of redundancy.
No, that's very important.
That's good.
Very important.
Last question. You get much reading in?
No.
Okay.
No. And before I go to bed at night, I'll read a New Yorker or something like that. I'm reading a book now about the history of music in Hollywood. That's kind of interesting. So it's just whenever I have a free moment or when I'm traveling, on a plane or a train somewhere, I'll read.
Gotcha. Bill, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Okay, good. My pleasure. Happy to be here.
And I usually go longer, but 40
when's
minutes.
When's this going to broadcast?
I can do it either next Tuesday or the Tuesday after.
Okay.
I don't know if there's is there something that would make sense to?
Yeah, next Tuesday, where the Revengeance film is opening at the Laemmle in Santa Monica. Mm-hmm. And Jim Lujan will be there, and I will be there, and we'll give away free goodies, and everybody gets a free sketch from Bill Plympton. It starts on the 11th of August. Cool. The 10th of August, 10th of August. So if anybody's in the LA area, cool. Tell them to go see Revengeance. And a little hint.
Yeah.
If you're into getting stoned, it's a great stoner movie, Revengeance.
Okay, the other question I was going to ask. No, I can seg it back in here. Drugs?
I used to.
Keep up? I know your big early influence was acid, as I remember from the documentary.
Well, I only did acid once, but I did, when I was in college at Portland State, I found that I was really a good drawer, draftsmanship. Really, I got all the muscles right and the proportions right, but the drawings are really boring. They look like a camera. They just really had no style, no emotion, no thrill to them. And then I started doing cannabis, not regularly, but at parties, someone would hand me a cigarette, and I found that my drawings started to get really interesting. They were more exaggerated and stylized and weird, just very weird. And I found that surrealism is a really important part of the success of my films, coming up with images that are really strange and bizarre and different. And so I claim that that's probably the cannabis hitting in, and some of the acid. I think I did another one. I can't remember what it was. This was so long ago. I don't do it now, of course. I don't know why, of course. I still could.
Well, that was sort of the question, but I figured with the child and all that stuff, I was not going to push it.
I may do it in L.A. when we show the film, because there may be a lot of stoners in the audience, so we'll see.
You think?
Yeah. I know L.A. it's legal now, so.
Yeah, I've funny stories about that, but
I bet.
I'll let you get back to it, though, Bill. Thanks so much.
Okay, my pleasure.
And that was Bill Plympton. His new feature film is Revengeance, and it's playing at the IFC Center in New York this week and LA next week. Bill's Trump Bites cartoons can be found on the New York Times website. Bill's studio is Plymptoons, and you should check out their site, plymptoons.com, to see more of his short cartoons and features and find out what he's working on next. Now that's plymptoons.com. He's also on Twitter as Plymptoons, and the Trump Bites series has its own feed as well, Real Trump Bites. Now, as you heard, I asked Bill a variant of my, "So, who you reading?" question, and it wasn't too fruitful. Still, if you want to hear my other guests answer that question, you'll need to become a supporter of the Virtual Memories Show so you can get access to our quarterly bonus podcast, Fear of a Square Planet. The newest episode just went live, and it features book recommendations from last quarter's Virtual Memories Show guests, including Stephen Heller, Dean Haspiel, Jaime Hernandez, J.J. Settlemeyer, Michael Kupperman, Ilana Meyer, Christopher Brown, Irvin Ungar, Alberto Manguel, Chris Reynolds, and Dave Calver. You can support the Virtual Memories Show via patreon.com/VMSpod or paypal.me/VMSpod. I've got all sorts of goals and goodies in place for patrons, including that podcast, patron-only blog, handwritten show notes for every episode, my secret project, and more. So go to patreon.com/VMSpod and support the art of fine conversation. This was a 2 shows in 1 day visit to New York City, and it cost $12 at the GW, $31 for parking. I didn't leave a tip because the attendant was surly, and there's usually a much nicer attendant at that garage. There's 2 or 3 of them, but this one guy copped an attitude, so no tip. $11 in subway fare and $30 or so for lunch and coffee. Split that among 2 episodes. Now, if you want to help defray some of the costs of the Virtual Memories Show, like web hosting, travel, equipment, coffee, or just toss me some money because you think the show is worth it, then visit patreon.com/VMSpod or paypal.me/VMSpod and make a one-time or recurring donation. A special thanks go out to Joe Caruso, Michael Hacker, Michael Janizik, Paul Karasik, Fred Kish, Jonathan Kranz, Jack Lescamella, Teresa Lewis, Andrew Mason, Stephen Nadler, Payne Prophet, Dmitry Samarov, Stephen Solomon, Craig P. Steffen, Greg Tanner, Ford Thomas, Noah Van Sciver, and Garrett Zecker for going over and above in their support of the Virtual Memories show. We have the full list of show supporters at chimeraobscura.com/VM. Our music for this episode is Fella by Hal Mayforth, used with permission from the artist. And that's it for this week's episode of the Virtual Memories Show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with Lance Richardson, author of House of Nutter, the Rebel Tailor of Savile Row. Until then, you can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show and download past episodes at the iTunes Store. You can also find all our episodes and get on our email list at either of our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. You can also follow the Virtual Memories Show on Twitter and Instagram at vmspod, at facebook.com/Virtual Memories Show, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on YouTube, TuneIn, and Spotify by searching for Virtual Memories Show. And if you like this podcast, please go to iTunes, look up the Virtual Memories Show, and leave a rating and maybe a review for us. That'll help us build a bigger audience. You've been listening to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth, and you are awesome. Keep it that way.